Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Ranking Revolution podcast. My name is Doug Cunnington. I'm your host. Today, in this episode, I chat with Kyle Roof about the keyword golden ratio. He actually suggested the idea to me, which I thought was outstanding because it allows us to talk about me without directly talking about me. So it was pretty fun, and Kyle did awesome. And if you're unfamiliar with Kyle, number one, be sure to check out the previous episode where we talk about SEO testing, but I can tell you a quick little intro about Kyle. Kyle is involved in many SEO and online businesses, from the on-page SEO tool, Page Optimizer Pro. Some people call it POP. And he also does training at Internet Marketing Gold, IMG. Kyle's also a co-founder of the SEO Estonia conference, and he's a speaker and attendee of many SEO and online marketing conferences across the world. He has dedicated nearly a decade of his life to SEO testing. He's published more than 400 scientific tests that he's executed and provided the results. Most of those are over in Internet Marketing Gold, IMG. Over the years, Kyle has developed and fine-tuned a method to test whether single variables are ranking factors in the Google algorithm, and that is the topic of the previous episode. In fact, he actually has a patent on this, which was granted in January of 2020, which is pretty cool. Like I said, we talk about the keyword golden ratio. In this episode, we talk about the pros and the cons and the pitfalls and how you could use the KGR to sell effectively and get results for your clients, especially if you're a small agency operator. Of course, you could scale it up if you have a big agency, but KGR just sounds good. Keyword golden ratio. It's something that you can bring to the client, explain what it is, explain how it's data driven, and go from there. So let's hear from Kyle on the KGR. All right, so let's talk about the keyword golden ratio. That's something I created and talked about for a few years. And I kept talking about it. And then finally, I can't remember if you and I connected first, Kyle, but I have to thank you for mentioning KGR at conferences. And for people that don't know, I'll link up to more information. But essentially, it forces, especially beginners, it forces people to look at lower competition, long tail keywords, sort of by the definition. It's very simple for a newer person to implement. And the other part, which only occurred to me later, it's a pretty good sales tactic, as we talked about in the previous segment. If you're talking to a client and they don't know much about SEO, keyword golden ratio, it sounds cool. And then you can show very simple data without getting too detailed. And that's where you lose a lot of people, whether they're beginners or they're clients. But number one, Kyle, thank you for mentioning KGR and mentioning me, because people come and they're like, hey, I heard Kyle mention you. You must be okay. So thank you. And then the other part is you have found really good success with KGR. I think last time we talked, you said maybe like a 70 to 80% success rate. However, you address some of the issues with the KGR. So again, like before, I'm going to kind of leave it open, but can you tell me about your experience with keyword golden ratio and some of the tips and improvements that you found?
Well, first of all, you have to think that keyword golden ratio has to be the best branded term in all of SEO marketing, right? Because there is nothing golden ratio about it. If people know what the golden ratio is, this is not the golden ratio. But it is mathy, right? And I think because it is mathy, I think you get away with it. Also, people have probably no idea what the golden ratio is anyway.
They forget.
You're talking about it's a million years since we've been in high school and taken a math class. Imagine, what is the golden ratio? Who knows? Who knows? Who cares? But I love the branded term. I think it's the perfectly branded term. So I think it's fair to say that when KGR came out, it really came out like gangbusters. And I think a lot of people were talking about it. And then I think a lot of people started getting mixed results with it. Like, I think initially, I think the results were really high and really hitting. And then I think maybe some of the results tapered off, and I think enthusiasm for it dropped a little bit. Do you think that's fair?
Yes.
Not to
100%.
And so what I got into 2019-ish was Avalanche theory. Avalanche theory looks at a way to determine how strong your site is. is really what it is as base level, and in a way so that without using a third party tool, that's giving you a metric of a DR of 30. What the hell does that mean? But it's looking at how strong you are based on the amount of clicks that you're getting from Google. This is the original theory. And what it speaks to is it says, hey, look, your actual strength is how many clicks Google's giving you. And so a site that is only getting 10 clicks, a day, that's here at level 1 kind of a site. A site that's getting 1,000 clicks a day, then it's at level whatever, level 1,000 if you want to go there. And the idea is that you can start to classify what types of keywords you can go after with little to no SEO, where if you launch a term that's within your tier, Google will trust you for it because you're launching at a correct level. And the example I give all the time is, let's say you did one of those longer tail phrases, right? And you launched and you really didn't do too much to the page, and you're just immediately on page 2, and you're an SEO god. And then you do one that looks exactly the same. You do the exact same process, and you don't crack the top 100, and you feel like a complete SEO failure. And what's the difference between those two terms? When they look the same, right? The idea is that one was probably within your tier, and Google just trusted you for it. The other one was not. And if Google doesn't trust you, if it's not within your tier, that's when you need boosts, is what the theory says. And boosts would be more intense on-page SEO, more intense internal linking, and in particular, and mostly, external signal. That's where you need backlinks to get you up so that you can then compete. But the idea is the more you rely on boosts, the more susceptible you are to Google updates. Anytime there's an update, while Google giveth, Google will taketh away. And the biggest thing they'll take away are those backlinks. And then a penalty in this theory isn't really getting hit. It's just Google taking it back down to where you belong, is the concept. So the idea is, if you can post within your tier and those will rank quickly with basically no SEO, as you gain more clicks, then you can go after terms with higher search volume. And then you post in that, and then you get more clicks, and then you go after terms with higher search volume. And then you can climb this ladder, go up these tiers, and essentially you've done SEO with no SEO, or very, very limited SEO. So there's nothing for Google to take away. It's an extremely safe process to grow out your SEO. Now, there are a lot of that's a very basic version of it. That's not a complete SEO theory, but it's, I think, foundationally very, very good. So something that I realized with KGR is that I can combine these ideas of Avalanche with KGR, because Avalanche works best when you're also finding low competition terms. So the idea is, if you identify what your tier is, and how you identify your tier is, you take your low clicks for the month and then your high clicks for the month in like a 3-month spread, and you want to make sure that's a normal 3 months for you. And then you average those together. So let's say your average is 50. You're averaging 50 clicks a day. That means you can go after keyword with a monthly search volume of 50, probably 50 to 100. That gives you the range of your terms. So now you can apply KGR as a filter onto that. So just because you find a KGR term, that might be, I think you actually cap KGR like 250, right? Is what you recommend. Mm-hmm. Thing is, I think a lot of people come in, they've got a brand new site, and they really should only be going after terms that are like 10, but they're finding terms at 150. That's outside their tier. And even though the KGR is correct, it's probably not going to work for their site because they're not in the right tier. The site does not have that authority yet. So what I started doing was determining tier first, adding in KGR as a check, and then one more check. And this is, if you really want to get into it, is you take KGR as the next filter, as that's the really next most important filter, and then just use one other thing, any tool you like, Moz, SEMrush, Ahrefs, doesn't matter, and then find whatever they consider low, medium to low difficulty. And if you get a keyword that satisfies all those things, it's in your tier, gets through KGR, and then gets to that one extra check, the hit rate is about 80% on that, where you're going to launch it with no SEO. You're putting it in the URL, the page title, and the H1, maybe one time in the body, and you're ranking for it. And then what happens is they start to get clicks and impressions, your tier raises up, and then you can go. And then really this is foundational so that you're building all this strength. Now, what I use this is for my supporting pages. I've got target pages that are outside the tier, right? And that's okay. I'm building all these guys, and as they juice up, as they're ranking for those keywords, they're getting those clicks and their impressions, I link them together. I link to the target page. Now I'm boosting that target page with this strength that I've been able to determine with KGR is a huge part of it, and relying less and less on external backlinks, and just creating these fantastically strong sites that are mostly impervious to Google updates.
Awesome. So one thing to go back to, I think, like you mentioned, KGR was pretty effective. I think I released it in 2016, 2017. It was actually inside a course. And I was like, I think this is the best idea. I don't want to put that outside of the course. But then, like many marketers realize, you get your best ideas out, and then that'll help everything else out. I think it started to get more saturated. Just there's enough of us out there that we're publishing things. So it was more effective with sort of higher search volumes outside the normal tiers, if we go with the Avalanche theory nomenclature. And basically, as time went on, I was like, go after, 10, 20 searches per month. If it's reported 0 searches per month, but it looks like a good keyword, keep going for that. So it totally makes sense. And most people that I was advising were either brand new sites, so it makes sense to go with the kind of the lowest search volume that there is, or sites that were stagnant, or maybe they experienced some decline, and it was a way to sort of jumpstart their lower competition area. Really, like you said, supporting pages around like a cluster or a topic area. So one other thing, I'm curious your opinion. So there were some suggestions and actually some things internally that I would use to just add additional checks. And part of the magic with the KGR is there's very few factors. There's no parentheses. It's just like divide this, you have a ratio, like move from there. There's some baked in things because of the way the ratio is created. Are there any other factors aside, you mentioned the Avalanche theory and that additional filtering mechanism to get rid of some of the stuff that wasn't going to work out, those keywords, but any other thoughts that you had where you were like, oh, it'd be good to throw in some other competition factor, some word count, some other thing that would make it more complicated and less usable?
The two biggest parts of it are combining the idea of your Avalanche tier, figuring out what your strength is, the level that Google will immediately trust you with KGR. Those are the two biggest steps. The competition part comes in throwing that one additional check with an SEM rush or an Ahrefs to find their difficulty level and get medium or below on that. Because then that will kind of, every once in a while, you're going to get a term where it meets everything, but then you go and look at the SERPs and everybody's a DR80, or
Right.
we're not going to get that. So that's kind of like that one additional kind of external check, normal check. You can skip that if you want. You're still going to be pretty successful. You're going to be very successful with this. One caveat I would put on everything I just said, when I talk about an Avalanche, that's the very basic version of it. And this is not my theory. It comes from Chris Semper of SERPWoo. And you can read about this in Builder Society. I think it's called SEO with No Resources, which I strongly recommend you reading. That is a great first step. I would say that it's missing. It's not a complete SEO. You don't and now our SEO is done. There's a lot more. There are more things SEO, but foundationally, this is an excellent thing. And I've adapted a lot of it from those initial concepts as well, and what I've used in practice and what I talk about when I'm on stage and stuff like that. So there is more, a little bit more to it, and as you work with it, but the basic concept of Avalanche plus KGR is just a home run for doing evergreen SEO that kind of builds this moat, this layer of protection around your site from Google. Is essentially you are doing SEO with good research, which I absolutely love. It's not a trick. It's not a gimmick. It's finding these parameters, finding these keywords that meet these conditions, and then applying it. And then from there, you've done everything within Google's guidelines. You haven't done anything that's outside the guidelines. This is white hat as white hat can be. And it only kind of perpetuates this cycle of good for your site. As you do this, as you've got this content, and as you continue to go up the tiers, your site is just getting stronger. And then what happens is then those other things in SEO that that work, they work better. then you continue to do those things that and you've got this foundation that's just making the site stronger and stronger. Anything else that you know how to do that is effective becomes more effective. And though, if this technique that you're doing downline Google doesn't like it as much, the boat doesn't rock as much either. Your dips are not as dippy when you're doing it this way.
So you're not currently doing client work, but you had some agency experience in the past few years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, with high voltage. So we founded that in 2014, I believe.
From a sales perspective, how could a smaller agency owner or even a solo operator use KGR to maybe like help close deals or grow the revenue from a particular client? Of course, I mean, we want to make sure they're getting success, but do you have any tips on how to use KGR?
Well, absolutely. So you can turn this concept into your own branded thing. So this isn't, you want to productize everything that you're doing. So your keyword research isn't, keyword research, and it's not necessarily KGR, but it's like, this is the SEO optimizer 5000 technique, or whatever it is. And but then what's really nice is with the math, you can show that it's not fairy dust. It's not rolling chicken bones. SEO, it's actually math based, and I'll show you the math. We're going to do this because obviously we know how to do it better than you do, but we can actually say that this is math based and this is why we do it, and these are the results we're expecting. And that can take you into such a practical, because as you said, the beauty of KGR is the simplicity of it. Take this, divide that, shimmy it over here, bingo, bango, bongo. Now we're really just adding one other step to say, like, okay, this is the tier we're going for. This is the volume keyword that we want to hit. Now we're doing KGR on top of that. And now we've got a recipe for success that's repeatable, that's understandable, and we can apply immediately. And it's the kind of thing, too, you get quick wins out of this. You get wins in 1 month. So then maybe even while you're doing an SEO audit, you can see like, these other guys, they've got to do audit in month 1. Yeah, we're going to do an audit 1 month because that's just due diligence. At the same time, we're actually going to do our first round of Avalanche content. And on the agency, we call it compound SEO because, the interest is compounding as you go up. So we can start round 1 of compound SEO, and we're going to crank out 15 compound articles right now. And it's based on this math-based concept. And we can start to get some quick wins in month 1 or month 2.
Awesome. And yeah, I'm happy to license it to agencies out there. Just shoot me an email. I'm sure we could work out a good deal, and you could put keyword golden ratio right there on your reports. So
you can do like your name in like a font, like a scripted font by Doug Cunnington.
I think the logo will be like a bald head with like the keyword or the golden ratio like shown on my head. It's the perfect roundness. No one actually knew.
Like math equations coming out.
Okay, so final question. KGR has been around for a little while now, and you mentioned like it was pretty effective at first, and then maybe it tapered a little bit. Now we have a lot of AI impacts, both for writing content, the amount of content that's out there, how Google is treating content in general and showing results. And do you have any fear that like KGR or even like Avalanche theory will become less effective because of just massive changes in the SEO industry?
Well, so I've seen people that have started sites after the March core, and everything that we've been talking about works. I think sites that have been hit by March core, sites that have been hit by HC, they could live in purgatory for a couple of years, which really sucks. I've heard a couple rumors of some recoveries in the last week, and maybe we're going to see a few more in the next month, and I really hope that we do. But there's a decent chance it's very similar to 2012 when Penguin came out, and those sites that were hit by Penguin languished for years before those domains were able to do anything. And I think this might be something similar. But what this tells me is that it's actually more of a manual thing than an algorithmic thing. Meaning, if your site got through this huge, loud display of Google doing this thing to force people to conform to however they want to do it, and people get scared and all that. But if your site made it through, techniques are going to work. And if you started a new site, since then, the techniques are working. So I'm not overly concerned about it. The new features, I think it's gonna be similar to when the featured snippets came out. That haircut on traffic was about like 10%, maybe. I think it's probably something. Let's call it 15%. The market will adjust to that, and I think we'll still be doing the same stuff for the next few years at least.
Yeah. And just as a quick note, it's March 21st when we're recording this, just to add a date on it. And I broke my own rule, Kyle, because I was like, all right, we don't want to say anything too super timely, but I know we're not going to be able to talk too much longer. So I was like, I just personally want to know what you think about this. And it's interesting because I have, like we do, a few months ago, I bought a new domain. I was like, I got a new project idea. I usually try to suppress those feelings so that I don't start new things while I have like 80 things going. And I've been sitting on it for a while, but I've heard new sites are getting traction too. And it's just like, I mean, if the sites were around and they got hit by the updates, then who knows what's going to happen. But like new sites are getting traction. So, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Kyle, this has been amazing. It's always so fun to talk to you. And hopefully we'll be able to meet in person sometime before too long. I don't know when our travel schedules will align, but where do you want people to find you? And we'll link up for everyone to go check it out. But yeah, where are you at? What do you want people to look at from you?
Yeah, they can hit me at pageoptimizer.pro or img.courses. Either of those are fine. If you have questions, both the support staffs on both those sites can get those to me as well. So that's probably the best way to do it.
All right. And people can probably expect to see you out at conferences across the world. And
That's right.
You're often a speaker. I think you hang out a lot. So people will be able to walk right up and just say hello.
Oh yeah. I go to the conferences for the beers and like and meeting people. So definitely, if you see me out somewhere, come up and let's have a beer and let's hang out.
All right, man. Well, we'll catch up soon. And thanks again.
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks a lot to Kyle. And as we mentioned, you can go follow him in various places. I'll link up in the description. And I encourage folks to check out Internet Marketing Gold for sure. Page Optimizer Pro if you need a tool to help you optimize the on-page of your sites or your client sites, of course. One last thing. I don't ask for it all the time, but if you dig the show, if you find it entertaining or effective or helpful in some way, please share it with a friend or a colleague, or maybe you're at a conference and you know that there's a good episode in a topic area and you're chatting with someone who is asking questions about that topic area. Share that episode with them. Word of mouth really is the best way to spread the word for a podcast. Reviews are helpful. People see that folks are reviewing a podcast. But if you actually tell someone about a show in a specific episode, that is the best way you could help me out. And I would really appreciate it. So thanks a lot.